Welcome to INWED Talks, an initiative of the Women's Engineering Society that celebrates International Women in Engineering Day. INWED is the Women's Engineering Society flagship global campaign that highlights and creates a sense of belonging through the achievements, contributions and impact of women engineers, whilst hopefully inspiring future generations of women to pursue careers in engineering. These INWED talks are a series of conversations exploring the INWED 25 theme of Together We Engineer through various lenses. And this INWED talk focuses on engineering and academia, exploring both the experiences of women in engineering and academia and the current state of engineering courses in UK universities. From representation and leadership to funding challenges, enrolment trends and industry partnerships, we'll examine how higher education is evolving to support the next generation of engineers. And to do this, I'm delighted to welcome Dr. Judith Okeyegu, Head of Electronic and Electrical Engineering at Robert Gordon University and a trustee here at the Women's Engineering Society. Welcome, Judith. And Johnny Rich, CEO of the Engineering Professors Council and friend of the Women's Engineering Society.
Definitely.
Pleased to say. So I'm hoping you will share your perspectives on academic career pathways and the crucial role of universities in shaping the future of the industry. And by bringing together your expert voices, we hope to spark a meaningful conversation around equity in engineering, academia, education reform, career development, and just reinforcing the importance of supporting diverse talent and strengthening professional opportunities. So let's dive in. Could you both introduce yourselves and share a little bit about your current roles? And Judith, we'll start with you, please.
Thank you very much, Susan. My name is Dr. Judith Okeyegu. I'm Head of Electronics and Electrical Engineering in Robert Gordon University here in Aberdeen. That's my day job. I also do research, and my research interest is on finite element analysis and pipeline monitoring. And I'm really passionate about creating inclusive learning environments and supporting the development of future engineers, particularly through mentorship and advocacy for women in STEM. Thank you.
Amazing, Judith. And Johnny, do you want to introduce yourself?
Thank you very much, and thanks for inviting me. My name is Johnny Rich. I'm the Chief Executive of the EPC. The EPC is the representative organisation or the membership organisation of engineering academics in the UK at all levels. So I know it's got the word professors in there, but it's actually all engineering academics, and just about every single university is a member. And so we represent engineering academics, and we also try to support them in their professional practice, either by influencing policy or by informing them about policy and what's going on in government, and also about sharing good practice as well amongst the community of engineers. I actually have a couple of other roles as well that it might be worth mentioning. So I've been involved for many years in an outreach organisation called PUSH. So that gives me, it's not STEM related, but it gives me a bit of a perspective on the pipeline of young people and their attitudes to engineering. But also I'm involved in things like the Lifelong Education Institute. I'm on their board and various other policy areas.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you both. And Judith, if I can just come back to you, do you want to give us a quick overview of what perhaps drew you into a career in electronics and electrical engineering in academia, and then, you know, come round to perhaps what motivates you in your leadership role? You touched on it a little bit in your introduction, but it'd be good to sort of draw out a little bit more on that.
Thank you, Susan. So my background is mechanical engineering, and so my path to engineering academia has been shaped really by more of curiosity and the strong desire to make a lasting impact. So from a very young age, I was naturally curious about how things worked. I had a deep fascination with tech and how we could solve real-life problems. So that led me to pursue engineering. But then I quickly realized it wasn't just about machines or systems, it was about people. It was about communities and creating solutions that make life better and more sustainable. So while working in the field, I found myself increasingly drawn to questions like, how do we teach better? How do we help students not only to understand what we say in class, but also to develop confidence and resilience, and a sense of purpose in engineering. That was when the spark for academia truly ignited. Academia offered the platform to do research, sort of try to solve problems that matter to society and influence the way engineering is taught. It then again gave me the opportunity to bring fresh thinking to curriculum design and to mentor students from different backgrounds, helping them to find their path, just as I was helped along during my time. It also, academia is incredibly rewarding, seeing students grow from unsure first years to confident graduates, ready to tackle global challenges. That's something I'd never take for granted. So it is academia for me all the way.
No, that's brilliant, Judith. And of course, Johnny, your role is really centered, I'm assuming, around people. But good to learn a little bit more about what motivates you in your leadership role in engineering education.
Well, I mean, first of all, I should own up. I'm not an engineer, but I don't need to be, because I'm surrounded by engineers.
Absolutely.
I'm surrounded by people who know the engineering. What I need to know is how to run an organization, but also I need to know about policy and how it's going to affect engineers, people. So as you say, it's about people. It's about the people who are doing the research, people who are doing the teaching, people who are running engineering departments, and also the students that are going through the system, and the graduates that they will become, and the wider population that, as Judith was saying, it's there to help people. And so engineering academia needs to fit into this much larger context of global skills needs and the national and international economy and things like the climate crisis and all of these challenges that we're facing. And engineering is absolutely instrumental to that, and academic engineering is instrumental to that instrumental thing. And so we need to get that bit right, otherwise so many other dominoes will fall over.
Yeah, no, that's such a good point. And I think one that sometimes we miss when we're talking about engineering, we focus on only one side of the coin. In sort of general discussions around that piece around industry, and we don't focus on the other side of the coin, which is the teaching and the research that underpins all of the industry things. So that's a really great point, Johnny. So sort of shifting a little bit now and looking at some of the challenges perhaps, and then the opportunities for women in engineering academia. Judith, if I can come to you, as someone who is and has navigated a career in academia, what challenges have you encountered, and what strategies have you used to overcome them? And then I think if you could talk about that maybe more broad, in the broadest sense, and then maybe sort of focus down around to which ones you think disproportionately affected you because you were perhaps a woman.
Thank you very much. Good question. So as a woman in a male-dominated field, I've encountered my fair share of challenges. One of the most persistent is underrepresentation. Now, this can create a sense of visibility without a voice. So basically, you've been seen but not always heard or valued equally, and that's really painful. There have been moments when I've had to justify my presence more than my male counterparts, or even navigate subtle biases, assumptions that I might be more suited for pastoral roles rather than technical leadership, for instance. But again, I've also learned to meet these moments with clarity. I've learned to meet these moments with professionalism and confidence in my expertise. I've also leaned heavily on peer networks and, mentorship, but giving and receiving, surrounding myself with people who uplift, challenge, and even encourage me to make a world of difference, just like yourself, Susan. Again, it's so again, it's also taught me the importance of creating this sort of spaces for others. And that's why I mentor younger women in engineering to help them build resilience, confidence, and a strong sense of belonging in their profession. So another challenge has been navigating the balance between teaching, research, and leadership responsibilities, which can be demanding. And, Susan, as you know, as a woman, family, kids, especially in leadership, there's often an additional pressure to be all things for all people. So setting boundaries, prioritizing self-care, family time, and staying grounded in my purpose have really helped me manage these pressures.
Yeah, and that's something that really comes across, Judith. I mean, I've seen you in action at Robert Gordon University, and you're the very model of someone who certainly projects as someone who's got all of that balance, but I know underneath a lot of work goes behind it. So thank you for sharing. And Johnny, from what you've sort of heard Judith say there, just there, and perhaps drawing on, from your perspective, looking across the university landscape, what structural challenges do you think there are that might be compounding some of those challenges that Judith has sort of drawn out there? And maybe you can't answer that, or maybe you have got some themes that tend to come up in your conversations across the universities. But what do you think are the structural challenges in the UK university system that mean perhaps we need to make some changes to make it more inclusive for women?
I mean, there are huge challenges for universities at the moment. The biggest one is money, and we might come back to that. But that problem then filters through absolutely everything. That the sector is getting to a point where it is extremely short of money to do anything that isn't absolutely essential. So that creates problems. We've also, specifically for inclusion of women, it almost doesn't need saying that women are underrepresented in engineering. It's about 1 in 6 engineering students is female. 1 in 7 in the industry is female. So there's a slight mismatch there. That it might be that will filter through, and we will gradually see that 1 in 7 get to be a bit more like the 1 in 6 represented in education as those people come up through. It might be a historical relic that it's not the same, but I fear that we are also losing more women once they get into engineering. And this tells us a whole bunch of things about the size of the funnel. So the funnel is too narrow at the top. Too few women are coming in. Too few women are coming in because too few women are taking physics A level and maths A level, and they're not. That's because they're not doing triple science at GCSE and of course Highers in Scotland. So these there are a whole bunch of problems before university. Then at university, we've got too few women coming in. If too few women are coming in, then too few are graduating. And it's worth remembering that 1 in 6, amongst those, international students are overrepresented. The UK is very popular for international students. Engineering is particularly popular for international students, and postgraduate engineering is particularly popular. There are in fact more postgraduates studying engineering than there are undergraduates in the UK now, which is a surprising thing, because how do they get to be postgraduates? Well, the answer is they come from abroad. and
Yeah.
they choose to study here. And other countries are less bad at bringing women into engineering than the UK. And so amongst those international students, we're seeing more women. So, and most of those international students go home to their home countries at some point. Now, that's great that we're supporting global engineering, but it's not so good for solving the problems in the UK in terms of gender balance and inclusion in engineering. And so recent developments, such as just in the last few days, the government has announced that they're cutting the length of time for graduate work visas from 2 years to 18 months. That means that fewer international students will be able to stay here, make a life here, and contribute here. And we definitely need more international students staying here to be engineers. So that's a couple of systemic problems. Another one is the way that traditionally research has been valued by higher education more than teaching. It shouldn't be the case. They're both absolutely critical to why universities exist. But what this has meant is that people going into teaching-led roles in higher education tend not to be promoted as much as those who have many research citations and lots of good papers to their name. They get the promotions. And for some reason, women have been sidelined into teaching roles that have this, because teaching roles are valued less, women get sidelined into them, and because women get sidelined into them, they get valued less, and we are caught in this vicious and unfair cycle that needs to be broken.
Yeah, that's I mean, it's difficult to know what to say to that, Johnny, because it feels very real. Judith, did you want to sort of comment on anything Johnny said there?
I mean, he said it all. Like I said before, when I talk about pastoral roles, maybe I should have said teaching, but that's mostly what we usually send out to do, and then the men stay back to do research, and that's, you know, that vicious cycle of not getting more women into leadership roles, because if they do sit back to do teaching and it's time for promotion, you're looking at research and research quality and how many papers has been published. If you're using that as a criteria and you're not sending women to do research, so how do you expect to get women up that level? So yeah, that's absolutely correct, Jenny. That's a very good observation.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because we're just doing a piece, well, a couple of things to pick up on what both of you have said there. So around the funding thing, we, Women's Engineering Society, we really recognise that funding barrier. And one of the things we've done, haven't we, Judith, as part of our education special interest group, is open up student memberships for free for those students at our partner universities, and a sort of an attempt to unpaywall that access to the peer network. So we've just recently done that. We'll see what the take up is for that. But I think the other thing we're also looking at is working with actually the Engineering Council to look at how professional registration for academics is made more focused on them. At the moment, a lot of the guidelines and a lot of the process is really focused on engineers who are practicing in industry and not on academics. So we're currently doing some work, aren't we, Judith, with the Engineering Council to look at how we might address that. So it's really interesting
Yes, it is really interesting. That has to stop. If we are churning out the engineers, then we shouldn't be looked down. It does seem like the PSRBs, so I'm talking about the professional bodies, say IMEC, IET, it does look like the accreditation process has been designed for people in industry and not really considering people in the academia. I've had to do a lot of fighting as a PRI for the IMEC. It doesn't, I've had to go on multiple arguments during sessions to say we shouldn't be thinking about these, and we should also consider people who teach. And a whole lot, but I'm not sure this is the right place for that conversation, because that's something that's really passionate. I'm really passionate about. So we'll just leave that.
We'll save that for another day then, Judith.
I'll save that for another day.
Well, I know that Engineering Council is looking at professional recognition, and in particular professional recognition for academics. But you know, one of the key problems for professional recognition is that it's a tiny proportion of people working in engineering. It may be as low as 3% of people working in engineering are professionally recognized. I think that's a problem for all sorts of things, for ethics, but also for inclusion, because it means if you don't know who the professional engineers are, it's very hard to know enough about them to make statements about what's going wrong and whether we're making progress on changing things.
Yeah.
But then again, accreditation is extremely valuable to you. I mean, Judith, you will know this far better than I. It's almost critical to the existence of an engineering course, that it should have that stamp of authority to say that this is a high quality course being run to professional standards.
Yeah.
And so interesting, because these days we're seeing PSRBs requiring more lecturers to be chartered. They're trying to bring that in as part of the accreditation process, yet you do not make the process to get chartered favorable to academics. So it's a whole lot. I like I said, I don't want to go into this conversation.
Well, hopefully we can influence that, because we are involved in that work with the Engineering Council. So and in fact we chair it. So hopefully we can influence Judith. So hang on.
Yeah.
So just widening out the conversation a little bit, but staying in some of those key issues. Johnny, I'm going to come to you, because I know you've been quite vocal, quite rightly, in your position on trends in engineering education at the UK universities that concern you. What would you pick out as the things that are concerning you the most?
Well, I mentioned international already. Now, these things all fit into that bigger picture of money, the funding crisis, and it really is a crisis at the moment. But what does this mean in reality? Well, at the moment, for the last 2 years, we've had a huge success story in terms of the number of people applying to engineering. Last year, there was a 14% increase in the number of students applying to do engineering courses in the UK. This year, it's 14.5% already, and we're only sort of 3/4 of the way through the year of applications. And so great success in terms of more people want to be engineers. Wonderful. We've got a skills gap in engineering. We're about to be able to fill it. No, we're not, because sadly, the number of students, the number of places at university is not going up. Why not? If universities can fill the seats, why aren't they increasing the size of the courses? It's because for every domestic student that a university recruits, and this applies to Scotland or to England and so on, and every part of the UK, they are making a loss, every single one, because in England that student comes with about £11,500 worth of funding. It costs about £18,500 to run that course per year. So for every domestic student, a university is saying, we'll take the hit. We want to produce engineers. But how are they going to take the hit? Once upon a time, they used to be able to cross-subsidize from courses like history or philosophy that maybe cost less than the 9,500 that they get for those courses. But now they can't, because those courses are costing the money that they get. So instead, they are cross-subsidizing from those international students. And we've seen the numbers of international students falling a little bit, as there has been over the past few years, this more hostile environment to international students who contribute about £40 billion to the UK economy each year, plus soft power, plus all sorts of other things, improving engineering courses, I would argue. But what this means is that universities, because they are loss making and they're not on engineers, domestic engineers, and aren't attracting enough international students, they are not able to meet the demand to become engineers from ambitious, able students. And that means that we are not sorting out the skills shortages. We are just damaging the country's productivity. We are hurting industry. And we are fundamentally dashing the hopes of these extremely able young people who want to be engineers. And that this is broken. We need to change the way the system works so that the money will follow what the country needs in sufficient quantities, and not be capped in the way that it is. Because what ends up happening is that students from the least advantaged backgrounds suffer. Students who've got the potential but not the prior grades suffer. Often it's women as well who may not put themselves forward to engineering, may have their doubts about, am I an engineer? Because that's not, because they're already struggling with the idea of an engineer being depicted as a man. And so marginalized groups, or underrepresented groups, I should say, in engineering academia tend to be the ones who get marginalized further by us restricting the number, and you end up getting the same old when it comes to who gets admitted.
Wow, yeah, I mean,
sorry, was I supposed to cheer you up or anything?
Yeah, well, maybe we'll come back to that.
There is hope.
And if I can restrain you and say briefly, what is that hope, Johnny? Give us hope at the end of that.
So the hope is, you cannot carry on forever not supplying the engineering sector. The government does have as key missions opportunity and growth. Creating opportunity is about supporting students from underrepresented backgrounds, whether they're from poorer backgrounds, from ethnic minorities, or in the case of engineering, women. Growth is about a healthy sector that meets skills needs. The government will have to align things eventually if they're serious about these missions. So my hope is that they will take a good long look at the funding system for higher education. They are currently doing that, but I don't think that they're looking hard enough or looking radical enough at the ways that it could be restructured. I think that employers will need, it will become too expensive for them to recruit unless they roll their sleeves up and say, right, let's get this training, this talent pipeline sorted for ourselves. So they will have to get skin in the game, whether they like it or not. And we've had over the past decade, I think it's a 20% drop. No, past 15 years, it's a 20% drop in funding for in-work training. That's across all, not engineering only, but across all employers. That's huge. A fifth of the money that they used to spend on training has just disappeared. And that's been because they can get away with it a little bit.
I was going to say, they may not be able to get away with it anymore, though, when they've got this pinch point on getting access to talent.
So I think the pendulum will have to swing back at some point. And I think the government would like to swing it back. We all know that they're facing a difficult time at the moment, but we're there to help them as well, and turn up with constructive suggestions about how it can all be delivered more quickly.
Great stuff. And Judith, from sort of within side, for the students that come in, what would you say are the key issues that may be arising from today's student expectations around, for example, curriculum development or teaching approaches that are key issues for you, do you feel?
I think first things first, we need to understand that the landscape of engineering education is changing rapidly. It is exciting, but it's got its own challenges. So education policy today focuses more on inclusion. It wants digital transformation and real world impact. So there's this growing expectation for universities not just to teach, but to equip students with the sort of skills and mindsets that is needed to solve global challenges. So be it climate change, AI to ethics, whatever. But industries too are evolving. Companies are asking for graduates who are not just technically competent, but also interdisciplinary thinkers.
Yeah.
Those who can communicate well, lead diverse teams, and even adapt to changing technologies. So there's also an increasing demand for sustainability literacy and data-driven problem solving. Now, on the other hand, students' expectations have also shifted.
Yeah.
They are now more aware, with AI, and they're more diverse and they're more vocal about what they really want from their education. This wasn't the case during my time. So students are now looking for relevance, flexibility, and a strong sense of purpose in their learning. They want their education to connect to real world problems and to reflect the diversity of the world that we now live in, fortunately. So all of this means that we as educators must be agile and innovative in how we design and deliver curriculum. So for instance, at RGU, we're embedding more project-based learning. We are incorporating industry-led case studies and fostering digital fluency across all of our programs. So what this means is that we're bringing students into the conversation. So we are co-creating the learning experience and listening to their feedback and continuously improving. It's challenging, but it is well worth it. That's what.
Yeah, I think Judith's addressing so many important things here about the way that engineering education is changing and adapting to meet those needs. It was what I was talking about before, about when you have challenges coming, external challenges, you go, right, what do we need to do? And the brilliant thing about engineering academics is they're problem solvers, and they've been given a really big set of problems, and they're being really creative about solving them. And I think, along with all the applied learning that Judith was talking about there, and the project-based learning, and things like CDIO, which many people will know about it, which is conceive, design, implement, operate, as a framework for approaching engineering problems, and also team working, which traditionally was not something you did at university, and now these particularly interdisciplinary teams. Some really exciting things going on in engineering education all over the country. I mean, there are some institutions like ENWED, which gets talked about a lot, which is a fantastic institution. Teddy London as well, Dyson Institute, but also really well-established traditional universities are also adopting many of these innovative approaches, and I think that's great. I'm going to make a little EPC plug here, because we've got a whole bunch of materials on our website about new approaches to engineering education. We've also got toolkits on embedding ethics, embedding sustainability. We're building one to embed complex systems all into the learning, to try and help out engineering academics in teaching things that perhaps they weren't taught themselves.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. We're here for collaborating and sharing, signposting good stuff, Johnny, so plug away. More than happy for you to do that. And I think I just wanted to sort of pick up on Judith's point there around, it's so great to see that that really deep level of inclusion, that these students are now involved in decision making around how the courses are developed and taught. So it's really good to see that really deep level of inclusion there, Judith. But just want to pick up, and this is to both of you, either of you. What role does industry need to play in strengthening the programs? I mean, you've both talked about that there, around working alongside industry, for both looking at making sure those graduates have that sort of full rounded employability, but also the role that industry plays in making sure the right research happens. And I know a lot of good stuff goes on there, but perhaps, and I don't mind who starts here, but what role do we think industry needs to be doing here to partner with universities?
Just a point to add, really. I think industry has to somehow be mandated, or whichever way this happens, to be co-creators in curriculum design. They must let us know what they want in our graduates. Otherwise, we'll be churning out people who are not useful to them, and that's going to be a problem. So I think that somehow this needs to happen on a higher level. I think industry should be partnering with universities in creating, say, projects, topics, and real life problems. I mean, it's well, during my own time, we just had to come up with a project topic, whether it was useful or not. That's not a problem. As long as you do it well, that's fine. But I think with the way the world is going now, I think the problems in terms of research that organizations, industry, Scott, has to be clearly worked on alongside researchers, and they should also, like I said before, influence what's being taught.
Yeah, so I think if I can just jump in there, Johnny, before I bring you in, I think that's a really key shift, isn't it, from focusing on just making sure the process is right to really focusing on process and outcome, for both graduates and their employability, and then the usefulness of research and innovation. Johnny, come in.
Well, I'm going to say yes, but. Because I do agree with everything you both just said.
Yes, I think you're supposed to say, aren't you? Yes, and. No,
yes, and. I think that some of the historic interaction with industry has been around very short-term needs, industry wanting to fill jobs, not create careers. And I think one of the problems we see with this arising from this is around apprenticeships. So not necessarily degree apprenticeships, although I think it happens there too, but lower level apprenticeships where somebody gets trained to do a job. What happens when that job disappears? And at the moment, what happens, is it in the interest of the employer to make sure that person can do that job not only for 2 years, but do the next job after that and the next job and carry on up? And actually, for many industries, it's not in their interests to make sure that somebody has progression. It's in their interest to make sure that they can fill that gap for the next however long they need to fill it. So that how do we build in the needs of the individual student and the needs of employers? And I think it is around, and what those need take a longer view than the employers sometimes will do, because the one thing we know is that AI is changing everything at a pace that even the most optimistic or pessimistic about AI never imagined. It is a roller coaster, and the skills needs of probably 5 years' time will be fundamentally different. Now, if it takes 5 years to apply for and study a degree and then get a job, and 5 years is absolute bare minimum for that pretty much, and you graduate into a completely different world, the course that was advertised 6-7 years ago is probably going to be inappropriate for the workplace of the future. So what are the skills that will be useful? They are some fundamental principles about engineering and engineering mindset as well, but also lifelong employability skills and lifelong adaptability, the ability to learn and adopt new skills. And those are things that higher education in this country has done extremely effectively in the past. We need to be quite clear about articulating that that is what the benefit that we confer, clear in articulating that to prospective students, but also to employers, so that they don't expect them necessarily to be job ready, whatever that means, from day one, but they expect them to turn up and be able to learn the job very fast and to be able to adapt to the job over time as the job itself adapts. And the way to do that is, I think, through applied learning, real life projects, as Judith was talking about. And this is where the yes and comes in. Everything that we're doing at the moment is building towards exactly those things I'm talking about. But I also think that there are ways to, and this speaks back to some of the funding challenges, there are ways to integrate the interests of employers and the money that they are going to need to spend on training into the shortfalls in the cost of providing education at the moment. Because if we can tie those two together, then everybody's interests are aligned. Employers have skin in the game to ensure that they get what they want, but students and universities are looking at ensuring that the student has a long-term career and is getting this long-term adaptable set of skills.
Yeah, and I could be mistaken, but I think I heard Judith say all of that that is what they're building, is those the cross-discipline thinking and those softer skills around resilience and looking for opportunity. Judith, did you want to come in there on that?
Yes, and I think I've mentioned that before, but I also completely agree with Johnny. Adaptability is a key one. So sort of the soft skills and basic engineering principles are the three, to me, most important skills that we would need, because like you said, AI is changing the world at a very fast pace. And so what you've done 5 years ago might not be so useful, but if you do have these skills, you should be able to integrate somehow. Yeah, and be useful to your future employers. So yeah, that's correct. I 100% agree.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, one of the things that we're trying to do at Women's Engineering Society is to think more holistically around that adaptability piece, and not just focus on connecting talent to industry, but looking at different pathways, looking at switchers, returners, and other sources of talent, because people's lives change, don't they? And some of those skills that we may be looking for in engineering will come from adjacent industries. So I think there's certainly something to be said for making sure we have that broad approach. I'm going to start wrapping this conversation up. I have to say it's been really brilliant getting you two together. Really sparked some great discussion. So absolutely loved it. So thank you both. I'm hearing that Johnny needs money and Judith needs more time. Time and money, Judith.
Quite right.
Yeah. But it's been really lovely to bring you together and have this really great conversation that we could carry on, I'm sure. But perhaps we could finish up. I don't know, maybe you have a kind of final message on International Women in Engineering Day that you'd like to share, either with students or academics and researchers, about shaping the future of women in engineering. Do either of you have a kind of final thought on that?
I do. Do you want to go first, Judith? Or?
No, that's fine, Jenny. You can go first.
Well, I think that a lot of the things that we need to do to make engineering and engineering education better for women are things that we need to do to make engineering education better. Yeah. There's some of the things that we've been talking about for the last half hour or so, but teaching-based promotion, allowing career breaks, allowing people to go off and spend time in industry and come back into education, getting people to work in teams that involve different divergent people with different interests, representing different backgrounds and groups. This is all going to be positive because, as Judith was saying right at the beginning, I was so, this was exactly right, that engineering is about making the world a better place, and that's mostly a better place for people.
Yeah.
And if we're going to make it better for people, having an industry where half the people make up 1 in 7 of the people working in that industry just means that you are inevitably not going to have engineering that meets human needs. And so inclusion means better engineering.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'll come from the angle of speaking to aspiring female engineering lecturers or researchers. And I think the first piece of advice would be to believe in your own voice. The second will be to build a support network, because the academic system can be really isolating. So seek out mentors, allies, collaborators, and just look for communities that affirm your growth. And I think the last one will be to stay curious and resilient, because engineering is always evolving. And so we should evolve along. Did I say the last one? Well, this is going to be the last one, will be to remember that we're not just shaping our careers, we are paving the way for others as well. So we need to be visible, we need to share our stories, we need to just show up and try to help to create a more inclusive and representative future for engineering.
Amazing, amazing. And Judith, you are the queen of creating community, so you're very seen you in action. So thank you both for spending time today to have this conversation. It's been really lovely. Some really difficult topics, but I think it's been time well spent today. So thank you both for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Yeah.